This is the brand new 1998 Lincoln Continental, a new look for 1998. I'm Richard Saxton, and my Market Talk guest is the new Vice President of Design for Ford Motor Company, just starting in the last few days. Jay Mays joins me to discuss what his future will be. He's 42 years old, University of Oklahoma, and then he went to design school in Pasadena. So a lot of local people would certainly appreciate where you've come from there, and you've certainly had a great career in the car design business, and now you're with Ford Motor Company. So how are you reacting to the new appointment?
Well, I'm very pleased to be back here in the United States. First of all, as I told you earlier, we've spent 17 years over working for various companies in Europe. Most of that time, of course, was spent with Volkswagen and Audi. Did a short stint with BMW. And it's only been in the last 2.5 years that I've been back working as a design consultant for Ford, and was approached a little bit less than 2 months ago to be the replacement for Jack Telnack. So
and you're going to be responsible for a lot of vehicles, too. I mean, from Jaguar to Aston Martin, everything that comes under the Ford ownership.
Everything under the Ford umbrella. That includes Aston, Jag, Mercury, Lincoln, 4 or 5 different prime brands, 63 nameplates around the world. So quite enough work to keep us busy over the next few years.
So how do you design so many cars? Well, obviously you have a battery of people that put together the work, but where's your influence as the overseer?
My influence really is laying the foundation for the house. We've got a lot of designers that are going to build that house for the individual prime brands, but it's up to me to lay the foundation, and that will determine the direction of the individual prime brands then.
Design is so important, because if it's not a good design, the car is not going to sell. I mean, you probably know that better than anybody.
Absolutely. What's really important is that it can be a good design, but if it's not right for that particular market, it may not get a good reaction in the marketplace. So what we're really going to be trying to do, particularly with Ford and Lincoln and Mercury, is try to separate those prime brands, clarify them, and punctuate the design that we think consumers are really going to want.
Now, how do you take over? Because some of the cars, obviously, that Jack Telnack designed will still be coming out for the next 2 or 3 years because of the lag. As we look at this car behind us, where is the look going? Is it going retro, more streamlined, less box, more rounded? How do you kind of explain how you take over and where the design is going?
Yeah, well, as you can see with the 2 Lincolns that you've been looking at today, both of these cars are really going back to some of the heritage that the Lincoln brand has had over the years. As we progress over the next 4 or 5 years with these brands, you'll start to see these same type of heritage cues, probably attached to a slightly leaner platform, and that's only addressing the ever-increasing younger markets that we're wanting to attract with these brands.
How do you design a car? I asked Jack this, inside out or outside in?
Inside out, I should say, and I really should say from platform up. Once we have the occupants in the vehicle located exactly where we want them for that particular market segment, next biggest thing is engine placement and wheel placement, and that really goes back to the overall track stance and attitude of the vehicle once it has its bodywork in place.
Nobody knows it better than the people at Ford. When you try to redesign a successful car, you've got to keep the loyalty and not get too radical. How do you walk that fine line of not, going to a radical design and also keeping the people that like the original model?
Well, that's always a tightrope act, but what we like to do is, again, look at the individual brands, know that if we're looking at Ford, for example, that we're pushing in a genuine and honest way, that we think that's really what our Ford customers are about, and we try to reflect that in the design of the vehicles.
All right, you spent a lot of time on German cars. Do you have favorite cars, or can we see cars on the street now that you had a hand in to get kind of a flavor of where your mind is at?
Well, I like a lot of old German cars. I love the 911s. I like a lot of old Mercedes. I also like a lot of Ferraris, just like anyone. But there's a multitude of American cars that I still love as well. I love the Thunderbirds from the 50s and the 60s. There's some Corvettes from that same period that I think are just wonderful vehicles and really talk to the optimism of that time. So I have a real mixed palette of likes and dislikes when it comes to automobiles. But I think it's really dependent on the country of origin.
And we see this world car behind us, and as a designer, are you building cars for the world, the North American market, or something more specific?
No, we're building cars for the world. This is the Contour SVT, and this vehicle, not unlike a BMW 5 Series, not unlike a Mercedes, we're planning to sell it around the world. Those cars are very successful in taking the heritage of their German ancestry, and that's what really people are buying when they buy those vehicles. We're saying the same thing with this type of vehicle. We're selling that optimistic American type of design, and we think there's an appeal for that around the world.
Let me ask you, because you spent so many years at Audi, which Audis really have your imprint on them?
Well, the Audi Avis show car was probably the thing that I was best known for, but that greenhouse or roof line really affected a whole generation of cars, from the Audi A4 to the Audi A6. Those were cars that I really had my probably highest influence on in the last 5 years.
As a designer, you must be pretty proud that Audi is really making a comeback in the U.S. market.
Yeah, after the lean years of the 80s, and certainly the whole problem with the 60 Minutes article and so forth and so on, it's great to see Audi back on their feet.
Which leads me to my next question, because you've spent so much time in Germany and a lot of time here in California at the Design Center. So when you kind of meld engineering and design and also what the culture's like, how do you fit it all together?
Well, there's two sides to a car. There's the functional attributes, there's the emotional attributes. And that's one of the appeals of coming back to Ford Motor Company, because they're very high on the emotional attributes. And I'm hoping to be able to bring in some of those functional attributes, which were really my training back in Germany. And I think it's going to create a nice balance for Ford.
Obviously, the Germans had problems with not enough power and maybe building the cars for the engineers. The cars got a little bit of overpricing, but they've certainly come back in the line and they're selling. So as an American company, how do you compete? How do you make a car as good? Well,
we make an American car to begin with. One of the things that people buy German cars for is the fact that they're German. And we want to be able to do the same thing with American cars. I think there's an absolute integrity to producing a top-notch American automobile.
Sports utilities, it's the craze. You've lived out here, and you certainly know how they're selling, and that's one of Ford's biggest sellers. And now the Expedition, after the Explorer has been so successful, and the Navigator. What are you going to do in that area?
Well, we're running along at a feverish pitch at the moment. I've been out here for the last 2.5 years, but as a consultant to Ford. You're right, everywhere you look, Expeditions and Explorers, and we're continuing to work on different types of products for that market, and you'll see niches developed over the next 3 or 4 years that will address different market segments, but still be sport utility vehicles.
As a designer, does the culture lead you, or do you think you lead the culture in terms of the cars you design and that are on the road?
The culture demands a certain type of vehicle to fit the taste of the times, and that's what we're in the business for, is to produce that vehicle.
All right, so you have to consult with the engineers, and how much can you actually do to the car? Is it just the cosmetics, the look, the way things are set up, or do you actually have an influence on placement of engineering parts?
Now, placement of engineering parts, package, platform, we're having an increasing role in, simply because it has a direct effect on the aerodynamics, has a direct effect on the packaging of the occupants, and has a direct effect, and most important to the designers, on the design and aesthetics of the vehicle.
Given that you're now with Ford Motor Company, can you tell me what maybe your favorite vehicles on the road are right now?
From Ford?
Well, any cars at all that kind of may influence you in future design.
I can tell you from Ford, one of my favorites right now is the Expedition. I'm also really awaiting the new XJR from Jaguar that's coming out. Having spent so much time in Germany, an emotional vehicle like the XJR is something that I've always wanted to own and haven't really had the chance to. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that vehicle.
Tell us about it. I mean, what's it going to be like?
Well, just the fact that it's a Jaguar, it has that British heritage, that's something quite different in its emotional appeal to me than the functionally driven vehicles that I was used to at Volkswagen and Audi.
And Ford has certainly had a big influence on Jaguar. A lot of people are buying them now because of that. How are they better?
I think Ford's done a great job at being a curator to Jaguar. They've kept them on track in terms of their heritage and haven't interfered with the designers that are in place in Coventry. And I think that's something that Ford should really be lauded for.
As you look at the dash, I mean, where on the priority list is setting up the interior of the car, the dash, and those parts?
Well, once the ergonomics of the vehicle are established through the basic package platform, we move in and really start to look at how things function from the driver's point of view. You'll see that this is a very traditional layout with the radio and heater and air conditioning controls down below. But everything's got to be usable for the driver. In this case, because this is a Lincoln, we're also trying to probably just do a dashboard that's accessible to the passengers as well.
All right, and the most important thing, I think, in a North American car, the cup holders, which I guess a lot of German cars kind of skipped on or skimped on.
German cars did, but I think you'll find on Mercedes, BMW, and Audi that they all have cup holders these days. That is a market demand, and that's part of our job, is to supply that demand.
What kind of demand are you getting now that you're having to give into that maybe as a aesthetic designer you might not want to?
Well, I don't think any of them are an aesthetic challenge so much. They're just incorporating them and integrating them into the overall design, whether it be cup holders or child seats in the rear or airbags. They're all things that make the automobile really more pleasant to drive.
Okay, looking at the instrument readouts, this is a blend, it happens to be, of actual and digital. I don't know if you call it analog or what, but there was a transition to where everything was a digital readout. Where does that stand?
Well, at the moment, as you can see on this vehicle, we have a mixture of digital and analog. The analog features on the speedometer and on crucial information, we've left that way. Where we can do a digital and where it's interesting information that we can put in a digital format, then we've decided to leave that for door ajar or for miles, for example.
Looking at the wheel, in addition to cruise control, now many car companies are putting radio controls, AM, FM, etc., all on the wheel to make it so you can look straight ahead and adjust your channels. What's your view on that, and is that the way things are continuing to head?
Well, it's really for the particular market. For a luxury vehicle, you might have cruise control or radio adjustment on the steering wheel of the vehicle. If you were doing a sports car or a very upmarket sports sedan, you might actually have shift controls here on the vehicle. So it's very, very much a part of the market.
In your mindset, the luxury car versus the more affordable vehicle, I mean, where do you kind of give up and where do you kind of add on depending on the cost structure?
Well, I don't think you try to make a luxury vehicle out of something that's sold in a lower market. You create a vehicle for the lower markets that is full of integrity and is right for that particular market. You save the luxury features for the luxury market because that's what buyers expect here.
Okay, as we sit in this luxury American car, what else can you tell me that's important in what we're viewing here?
Well, for more traditional buyers, as you can see, there's wood throughout the dashboard and doors of this vehicle. That's something that is really market-driven from the particular age group and of the buyers that buy these town cars.
Let me ask you, we can focus back on you now for a minute here, and the design of cars in California. There are design centers all over Southern California. It's a critical place for car design now.
Right. Over the last 15 to, well, really the last 18 years, you'll find that the vehicle centers for all the manufacturers have been out here in California. We're about to go out in about a half an hour to see ours at Ford Motor Company, and that'll be my first trip to the design center in Valencia, so I'm really looking forward to it, obviously.
Yeah, terrific, and congratulations. Looking forward to going to Michigan, too?
Absolutely. We're leaving at about 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm looking forward to getting busy when we get back there.
All right. Jay Mays, who's the new Vice President of Design for Ford Motor Company, my guest inside the new Lincoln Town Car.